White House Press Secretary Caroline Levitt joins us from the White House in moments to discuss the day's news. And the former president of Brazil has been indicted. His son is with me in studio to respond. It's an OAN exclusive. There's a transgender murder cult you probably haven't heard about. Journalist Andy Ngo has been on the case, and his report's coming up. Plus, Trump demands major cuts at the Pentagon. We've got all the reaction from Capitol Hill and beyond. All next on the Matt Gaetz Show. Let's do this. We're shaking up Washington, D.C. We're breaking the fever.
You ever watch this guy on television? It's like a machine. He's great. Matt Gaetz.
It's a massive news day. We begin with celebration of the confirmation of my good friend Kash Patel as director of the FBI.
51 yeas, 47 nays. The motion is agreed to.
Nomination, Department of Justice, Kash Patel of Nevada to be director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation.
But not everyone is as thrilled as we are. Shifty Adam Schiff freaked out in front of the FBI building this morning. Listen to this and tell me if you can hear the projection.
The only qualification Kash Patel has to be FBI director is that when everyone else in the first Trump administration said, no, I won't do that, that crosses moral, ethical, and legal lines, Kash Patel said, sign me up. He will misuse the resources of the Bureau. He will weaponize it against the president's political opponents.
I've never shared this story before, but how Kash Patel earned the opportunity to lead the FBI is quite something. A lot of people wanted to lead the FBI in the Trump-Vance administration, and many were unquestionably credentialed. Take, for example, Mike Rogers. Fresh off a close loss in the Michigan Senate race, he actively campaigned for the position. There were pro-Trump state attorneys general who many inside Trump world thought were very, very qualified, and for good reason. They could have been easily slotted in to lead the FBI. At the time, I was the Attorney General designate, so of course I was involved in the discussions. Only Kash for FBI. I repeatedly pestered President Trump to the point of near annoyance. I'd worked with Kash for 8 years. First, when he was the ace House intelligence staffer who decoded the Russia hoax for the fraud it was. Thereafter, Kash was among the leading voices to bring accountability to a broken surveillance system. Kash used his incredible knowledge and skill to support whistleblowers when the FBI's own leadership viciously retaliated against them. Listen to this FBI whistleblower, Garrett O'Boyle, describing what happened to his family.
In weaponized fashion, the FBI allowed me to accept orders to a new position halfway across the country. They allowed us to sell my family's home. They ordered me to report to the new unit when our youngest daughter was 2 weeks old. Then, on my first day on the new assignment, they suspended me, rendering my family homeless. They refused to release our goods, including our clothes, for weeks. But the FBI will crush you. This government will crush you and your family if you try to expose the truth about things that they are doing that are wrong.
As a private citizen, Kash raised funds to support the families of our brave FBI agents whose patriotism led them to tell the truth at great personal cost. I retold these stories over and over to President-elect Trump at that time. Stories of Kash's compassion, intellect, and loyalty to the Constitution. But there was one key moment. One night, Kash called the president directly, and in one 8-minute monologue, told him exactly how he would save the FBI. President Trump sat down with me the next morning at Mar-a-Lago. Kash called me last night, the president said. It was the best presentation anyone has made for any position in my government. We're going with Kash at FBI. I was thrilled, and since that moment, Kash has convinced even his skeptics that he will valiantly serve in this august role.
I will remain focused on the FBI's core mission. That is to investigate fully wherever there is a constitutional factual basis to do so. Due process must be provided without bias to all Americans. And if we cannot provide due process to the worst, then there can be no due process for anyone. And our constitutional republic fails. The priority of the FBI, if I'm confirmed, will be to ensure that our communities are protected and safeguarded and our children have parks to play in and not needles to walk over. I know what it feels like to have the full weight of the United States government barreling down on you. I will ensure, if confirmed, that no American is subjected to that kind of torment, to that kind of cost. Public trust can only be restored if there is full transparency.
Finally, today, Kash begins work at an agency rife with partisan politics, scandal, and violations of the law. He's just the guy to fix it. Other agencies of the federal government find themselves under intense scrutiny as Trump's waste-cutting ways continue. President Trump has decided that our government needs a little slimming down. Forget keto. This is the MAGA diet plan for a bloated bureaucracy that is gorged on taxpayer dollars long enough. By ordering an 8% cut to the Pentagon's budget and laying off 6,700 IRS employees, Trump is showing that he means business. So what do illegal immigrants and IVF treatments have in common? Absolutely nothing. But that didn't stop Trump from addressing both issues in his latest round of executive orders. On one hand, cutting benefits for illegals. On the other, expanding access to IVF. It is a classic Trump move. Tough on criminals, yet softer than a rom-com subplot when it comes to families trying to have kids. He's basically saying, if you want to grow the American family, just do it the legal way. And who could be against that? Foreign aid is feeling the squeeze too. Trump has frozen wasteful foreign aid and put USAID operations on ice faster than a New York sidewalk in February. Critics are hand-wringing and bedwetting. Reasonable people say this is Trump finally giving America a break from being the world's piggy bank. While critics are busy hyperventilating, President Trump continues to execute his playbook with style, flair, and intense focus on righting the wrongs. From cutting bloated budgets to renaming the Gulf of America, every move is calculated, every decision bold. Love him or hate him, you can't ignore that this is President Trump charging on. And isn't that the ultimate Trump card? Joining us now is White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt. Caroline, I'm dying to get to the news of the day, but all of our viewers just watched you crush it in the latest press conference. You're the youngest White House press secretary in history. You've already got a reputation as being one of the best. So how do you reflect on the job so far, and what is your prep like just before you go into that briefing room and take on the press?
Well, thanks so much for saying that, Matt, and thanks for having me on your new show. It's great to be with you. I love my job, and I'm so honored to have this job and so humbled that President Trump entrusted me to be his voice at this beautiful big White House behind me. And it's a ton of fun because I work for a president who's actually delivering on what he said he was going to do, and we are working at breakneck speed. There are no days off, no hours off in this White House. But as for preparation for the briefings, I have a very diverse media appetite, and I digest as much news as I possibly can before taking the podium. And then sometimes I sort of feel like an investigative reporter myself, going around the building, talking to the president, talking to all of our policy experts, many of whom, or three of whom you saw at the podium with me today, to try to figure out what's fake news and what's the truth and what are we saying about it. So I love my job. It's a lot of fun. And I work for a president, again, who's doing what he said. So it makes my life much easier.
Speaking of separating the truth from the fake news, IVF was in every Democrat attack ad in America. President Trump has just signed an executive order to create more IVF access, even though he was criticized as like somebody who was going to constrain access. So how will this executive order that President Trump signed impact family formation in our country?
I'm so glad you asked, because this is a key issue, particularly for women and women of younger generations. We know, unfortunately, fertility rates in this country have risen quite sharply. I actually saw Secretary of Health, HHS Secretary RFK Jr. at the White House today, and I know that it's something that he is committed to investigating to understand why that is happening. But in the meantime, we want to ensure that all American families, if they want to bring a child into this world, they have the availability and also the financial support to do that. Every baby is a blessing. That's what President Trump believes. And so this executive order was another promise made and promise kept. And I've personally heard from so many women across the country who reached out on social media saying they're very grateful for the president taking action on this very important issue to them personally.
We want more babies, and we want all of them to be safe. Somebody who's going to ensure that happens on the safety side is our good friend Kash Patel, who was just confirmed to lead the FBI. What's the White House's reaction to that vote and Kash's first day on the job tomorrow?
We couldn't be more excited or thrilled to have Kash Patel leading the FBI. This is an agency that has unfortunately been weaponized against the American people and certainly against President Trump over the past 4 years. And Kash Patel, there's nobody better than him to bring true accountability, a true law and order to the Federal Bureau of Investigations. Kash Patel is exceptionally qualified to lead this agency, and I think that's why you saw him go swimmingly through his Senate confirmation information, because when senators sat down with him and realized his extensive experience both as a public defender and also as a prosecutor working both sides of a courtroom, they realized this is a man who takes the Constitution seriously and who will protect our country from criminals. Don't forget, that's the true purpose of the FBI, to target violent criminals and terrorists and remove them from American communities, and work with our counterparts at DHS and other agencies to do that. And Kash Patel is the man for the job. We look forward to watching him get to work as soon as tomorrow.
President Trump wants 8% annual budget cuts at the Pentagon. I've got my own ideas about where there's a little bit of waste there, but where do you think we can find the most savings at the Department of Defense?
Well, first of all, this is President Trump's whole of government effort to cut back on waste, fraud, and abuse across our entire bureaucracy. It's a promise he made to the American people and a promise he is keeping. And I understand Secretary Hegseth put out a video today outlining where some of those cuts can be made, and also ensuring that all of the money that has gone to DEI and to funding government contracts that don't advance American interests but actually foreign interests will no longer be funded by American taxpayers, and that money will be transferred to fighting the war or training our war fighters and lethality, and ensuring that the United States military is the best, baddest, most lethal fighting force in the world. And so Secretary Hegseth, again, another exceptionally qualified individual with extensive military experience. He's a combat veteran. He knows what it means to put his life on the line to serve this country, and those are the war fighters that he is running to represent. And so I think American taxpayers, but most importantly our men and women in uniform, will be very proud of the changes that are being made at the Pentagon, a place where unfortunately they failed 7 audits in a row. That will be unacceptable under President Trump in this administration.
Republican Congressman Don Bacon, who is one of the subcommittee chairs of the House Armed Services Committee, took to X to post his disagreement with this strategy. He said, "We aren't going to be making these cuts at the Pentagon." How does the administration plan to get sufficient congressional support when I can just tell you, Caroline, a lot of these defense hawks, they're not for cutting $1 at the Pentagon. They think a 3% increase at the Pentagon is actually a cut. So what's going to be the pitch to some of those skeptical members?
Sure. Well, as I just said, and as Secretary Hegseth said today in that video, I'd encourage members of the Hill who may have some concerns to go watch what the Secretary said, because he is focused on ensuring that federal dollars that have been going out the door, again, on DEI, on waste and fraud and abuse, will be geared towards lethality and towards training our warfighters. So we can't just keep spending money when we're already spending money on a bunch of stuff that doesn't advance the DOD and the American people's interests. So we have to go line by line right now, see what is wasteful, and then again transfer that money to programs that are actually helping advance our military and focus on recruitment as well. That's something Secretary Hegseth has talked a lot about. Several branches, or all of the branches of our military, are facing recruitment and retention lapses, and they need more war fighters, especially when you look at all of the conflicts all over this world. We need deterrence. We need a strong military to do that. And so that's the focus of Secretary Hegseth in this administration.
Tonight there's a state dinner with Indian Prime Minister Modi. Do you have any major readouts from this visit where the United States and India have been working on a number of projects together?
Mm-hmm. Well, President Trump met with Prime Minister Modi last week here at the White House, and they did a joint press conference together showing the strong relationship between India and Prime Minister Modi. And the president is heading over to speak to the Republican Governors Association tonight. We're about to load up in the motorcade to go speak to Republican governors from across the country who have ascended on Washington to talk about how they can work together to advance the Trump administration and the American people's priorities and their respective states, and hopefully work with some of their Democrat counterparts too. We know the president is willing to work with anyone, Matt, Democrat or Republican, to find good solutions for the American people.
Final question for you, Caroline. I know a major goal of the administration is to wind down this war between Russia and Ukraine. We've had our delegation meeting in Riyadh. It seems as though some progress is being made to establish diplomatic ties and really look at the entire status of the relationship with Russia. What is the timeline the administration is looking at to end the hostilities there?
As soon as possible. President Trump has made it clear that he wants to see peace. He wants to see the killing on both sides of this war end. There are soldiers and innocent people who have been slaughtered in this war. And President Trump is a peacemaker in chief. And that's why he has had direct dialogue with both Putin and Zelensky. He has sent his delegation to talk to the Ukrainians and also to the Russians repeatedly to try to strike a deal. And he's committed to seeing that through.
And we wish them Godspeed. A star is born. That's what President Trump said about Caroline Leavitt's amazing work as the White House press secretary. Caroline, I'd tell you to stay warm in freezing cold Washington, but I know you have been hardened by the winters of New Hampshire, and so you're probably best prepared for some of these frigid temperatures. But Godspeed to you, and again, thanks for everything you do for the country.
Thanks, Matt. Good to